Back for those that have been with us, and for those that are here for the first time, welcome to Al-Miraath Institute. In this class, inshallah, we'll be covering a book called Mukhtasar Minhaj al-Qasidin, written by Najduddin Ibn Qudama, rahimahullah ta'ala, al-Maqdisi. Ibn Qudama is a very famous name. I don't know if you guys ever heard the name before. There's a different Ibn Qudama who is more famous than the author of this book. This book, Mukhtasar Minhaj al-Qasidin, is a summarization of Minhaj al-Qasidin that was written by Ibn Jawzi, Abu al-Faraj Ibn Jawzi, rahimahullah ta'ala. And if you guys are familiar with the name Ibn Jawzi, he's one of the great scholars of this ummah, right? Specifically in the Hanbali school of thought. Ibn Jawzi, rahimahullah ta'ala, Abu al-Faraj. Ibn Jawzi also did a summarization of Al-Imam Al-Ghazali's book, Ihya Ulum ad-Din, which is a huge encyclopedia, basically. The book itself covers issues on fiqh, right? The different chapters of fiqh, because the Al-Imam Al-Ghazali, rahimahullah ta'ala, was a faqih. He was a faqih Shafi'i. He was a scholar in the Shafi'i school. He was also an usuli. In usuli, if you guys are not familiar with the term usuli, is an individual who understands the principles of fiqh with the rules and regulations and the maxims that helps derive the rulings of fiqh. Does that make sense? So if you never studied usul fiqh, eventually we're going to start offering that class as well. We're going to offer, inshallah, usul al-fiqh, qawaid al-fiqhiyya, and so forth like that. But we're starting with this. It's going to be the beginning of the institute. This is year one. And I don't know if Sheikh Abdullah already mentioned to you guys yesterday that this class is only going to be offered once. So once this class is done, we're going to move on to the next book, inshallah. So, but for this book specifically, inshallah, this book is divided into 4 categories. We're going to be covering 2 categories from the book. And then for the next semester, we'll do the last half of the book, inshallah. So Mukhtasar Minhaj al-Qasidin is a book on suluk, which is like the path to Allah Azza wa Jal. Tazkiya, which is purification of the heart, the soul, and so forth. So this book specifically is going to be covering the spiritual side of ibadah. You know how a lot of times when we study the deen, we mainly focus on the ahkam, the rules of the deen, but we tend to forget the spiritual side of the deen, of the ibadah, right? So it helps us connect with Allah Azza wa Jal through our ibadah, if that makes any sense, right? So sometimes we focus on, oh, this is obligatory, this is sunnah, but we forget how to use that ibadah that we're doing to connect with Allah Azza wa Jal. So the whole purpose behind this book is to teach us how to connect with Allah Azza wa Jal through our ibadahs. To go back to Al-Imam Al-Ghazali, Ihya Ulum ad-Din, his book is huge. I don't know if you guys ever heard of the book before. Anybody? You have? So Al-Ihya is a book that Al-Imam Al-Ghazali wrote over a long period of time. And in the book itself, he covers issues of fiqh, he covers issues of tazkiya, spirituality, how to connect with Allah Azza wa Jal, and also Aqeedah. When Ibn Jawzi, rahimahullah ta'ala, Abu al-Faraj, who is Hanbali, right, he's Athari in Aqeedah, he took Al-Imam Al-Ghazali's book, and we know Al-Imam Al-Ghazali is Ash'ari, right? And he's a great scholar. He's a faqih, a scholar in fiqh, and the Shafi'i school specifically, right? And when it comes to usul al-fiqh, he's one of those scholars that we've heard back to. He has a great book called Al-Mustasfa, right? That all the scholars of this ummah rely upon. And then it goes down to the different books when you study usul al-fiqh, right? So Imam Ghazali is an imam. That's without hands down. Whether there's scholars that disagree with him, would agree with him, in the end of the day, Allah preserved his name, gave him his reward, and his name's been preserved to this day. And none of us can say that we are guaranteed to have our names preserved as well. So we have no rights to say anything bad about our scholars, yeah? So, because look, this is an example right here. Ibn Jawzi, Abu al-Faraj Ibn Jawzi took Al-Imam Ghazali's book and he summarized it. He summarized the book and he took out all the weak ahadith that he considered weak. And he also took out a hadith that had no origins to it, meaning it could be fabricated, or he wasn't able to find a source for it. And then he also took out certain things about tasawwuf, right? Sufism that Imam Ghazali had in his book, right? And that's a whole different topic. So he took out those things from the book and he wrote a book called Minhaj al-Qasidin. The word minhaj is nahaj, which is the path. And that path is to Allah Azza wa Jal. Al-Qasidin is ism fa'il for qasid, from qasada, which means to intend something, to have an objective. Qasidin are those that are trying to reach a goal. And what is that goal? To get to Allah Azza wa Jal. So Minhaj al-Qasidin is the path of those that are seeking Allah Azza wa Jal, right? And then comes Najmuddin Ibn Qudama al-Maqdisi, who is the author of this book, and he labeled the book Mukhtasar Minhaj al-Qasidin. And what he did with this book specifically, he took out all the ahkam al-fiqhiyah, anything that was related to fiqh, he threw it out the door, right? So, and he kept everything that dealt with spirituality, right? Because he said the whole purpose behind the book itself is not to focus on the rulings of fiqh, because you can find that in the fiqh books. So what he wanted to do with that book, he wanted to make it a book of spirituality, Tazkiya, purification of the soul, the heart, and so forth. And he called it Mukhtasar Minhaj al-Qasidin. And the word Mukhtasar comes from the word ikhtasara. You guys familiar with the word? How many people here studied Arabic before? How many people have studied Arabic grammar? Somewhat? You studied sarf before? You're studying sarf right now. So in the Arabic language, there's always, every single word always returns back to us. Al-asl, yeah? So, well, we won't get there, okay? Mukhtasar, anytime you guys come across a word that says mukhtasar and is referring to a book, is concise, summarized, right? Khasara means to limit something, right? So mukhtasar is you're limiting the information in this book from something that's more vast, but you're so you're limiting the information, or you're focusing on specific information. Does it make sense? So you're summarizing it now, right? Mukhtasar is what's being summarized. Mukhtasir with a kasra is the person doing the summarization. So the Mukhtasir here is Ibn Qudama. The book is Mukhtasar. So whenever you study any book in the deen and it says Mukhtasar, you know that book's going to be a summarized book, meaning that no proofs, adillah, ayat, Qur'aniyah, ahadith would not be mentioned in it for the most part, right? When you have in fiqh, you have Mukhtasar, Ghayatul al-Ikhtisar. I believe that's what you guys are covering with Sheikh Abdullah right now, right? Matn Abi Shujaa, also known as Matn Abi Shujaa, right? And that's in Shafi'i fiqh. And that's like the introductory level of fiqh, right? So it's called Mukhtasar, or it's called Ghayatul al-Ikhtisar, which is come from the same root word, meaning that it's only going to cover the issues of fiqh without its proof, right? And that's how, as a student of knowledge, you're supposed to learn how to understand the masail, the issues, before you learn the dalil. Because if you study the dalil first, you're not going to understand how things work. Does that make any sense? Right? You have to understand that prayer is obligatory. You don't need to know the proof. You just know that first. You study it, right? And you study that there are certain obligatories in prayer. You learn those rulings first, and then you go and study the dalil after. And when you study it like that, you'll understand the proofs later. But what happens to a student of knowledge, a person who's starting to learn for the first time, they always want to go to the proofs first. Where's your proof, It was al-Kitab al-Sunnah. But do we trust our understanding of the Kitab and the Sunnah over the A'imma, those that preceded us, like Imam Malik, Ahmed, Abu Hanif, and so forth? No, Allah Azza wa Jal has given them knowledge that's beyond our comprehension, and we're not even at that level for us to be like, let me go back to the Kitab Sunnah and try to understand the rulings from that. And what happens a lot of times, especially this day and age, There's a lot of confusion that's being passed around, a lot of mistakes being made, right? And they call it afatul ilmi, the destruction of ilm. Why? Because there will come a time, as the Prophet ﷺ said, that when it gets close to the day of judgment, what happens? People will start to take knowledge from the young, right? And when that happens, the whole ummah will begin to get lost, right? Even if people dress like Muslims, they dress like scholars. They call it what do they call it? Wolves in the clothing of sheep. Yeah, yeah. But it's the opposite. It's sheep in the clothing of wolves, right? People are dressed like scholars and all these different things, but they're juhala. What's worse than juhala? If you guys understand the Arabic word juhala, means ignorant people, right? Ahmaq, right? The word humq is what the scholars refer to those that dress as scholars, but they're ignorant. Why? Why do they call them ahmaq? They call them ahmaq because they will cause more harm to the ummah than they would benefit the ummah. Why? Because of their lack of understanding, and they will cause people to go astray more than fall into the right path, right? So we're going back to Mukhtasar. The reason Mukhtasar, anytime you guys come across a book called Mukhtasar, it's just going to focus on the issue itself without mentioning proofs for it, right? So we have Mukhtasar Minhaj al-Qasidin, which is the summarization of Ibn Jawzi's book, rahimahullah ta'ala, Minhaj al-Qasidin. And this book is written by Najmuddin Ahmed ibn Muhammad ibn Abdul Rahman ibn Qudama al-Maqdisi. And we said that Ibn Qudama is a very famous family name. And when I said Ibn Qudama, some of you seem like you're familiar with the name, right? There's a more famous scholar by the name of Ibn Qudama, and his name is Muwaffaq ad-Din. Right? They always refer to him as al-Muwaffaq. Muwaffaq ad-Din, Ibn Qudama al-Maqdisi, is his uncle. Is the uncle of Najmuddin Ibn Qudama al-Maqdisi. Okay, and that's the famous Ibn Qudama. He wrote the book Umdat al-Fiqh, which is the famous introductory level fiqh book in the Hanbali fiqh. He also has a book called Al-Muqni'. He has the famous book Al-Mughni, which is in contemporary fiqh, and that's one of the bigger kitab dakhm, they call it, a huge book, an encyclopedia on comparative fiqh, like how Al-Imam An-Nawawi has a similar book called Al-Majmu', right? Ibn Hazm, he has a book called Al-Muhalla al-Zahiri, in the Zahiri school of thought. It's called Muhalla, and there's other books like that where they compiled the opinions of scholars of different Assalamu alaikum. Sorry about that. I think the internet might be down. So today's just an introduction, inshallah. We won't be getting into any more than that. Okay, so I think we're going off a little bit. Just to go back to Ibn Qudama, rahimahullah ta'ala, Muwaffaq al-Din, which is his uncle, right? Najmuddin's uncle, who is the more famous Ibn Qudama. And Ibn Qudama al-Maqdisi, if you guys are not familiar with al-Maqdisi, is referred to al-Maqdis, Bayt al-Maqdis, al-Quds, al-Sharif, right? Their father, okay, Muwaffaq ad-Din, his brother is the father of Najmuddin. And his father was also Faqih Hanbali, okay? So his father and his uncle, Muwaffaq ad-Din, studied from the likes of Abu al-Faraj ibn Jawzi, which is, this book is the summarization of his book, Minhaj al-Qasidin. He also studied from Abdul Qadir al-Jilani, rahimahullah ta'ala. Those are all scholars of the Hanbali school. Those are major scholars of the Hanbali school. Even though you guys, when you hear the name Abdul Qadir al-Jilani, you might think about the Sufi sects and stuff like that, right? But the Sheikh is the Faqih Hanbali. Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, that's his teacher. He studied from him, right? He took fiqh from him, and he took other stuff, suluk and tasawwuf as well. If you guys don't know, Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah also studied tasawwuf, right? And it's tasawwuf is basically tazkiya. It's just a different terminology used. But what happened was there were people that came after that destroyed that terminology, and they started doing their own things outside of the folds of Sharia that kind of destroyed that whole image of Sufism. You see in Kitab al-Ruh, which is the book of the soul, Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala said, "Ana Sufi." He said, "I am a Sufi," but not the Sufi that we are familiar with, right? So Abdul Qadir, Sheikh Abdul Qadir al-Jilani was the teacher of Muwaffaq ad-Din, the famous Muwaffaq, the author of Al-Mughni and so forth. So we're going to be doing this book, inshallah, which is Mukhtasar Minhaj al-Qasidin by Al-Imam Ahmad ibn Muhammad ibn Abdul Rahman ibn Qudama al-Maqdisi, rahimahullah ta'ala, who passed away in the year 746 after the hijrah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay. Everyone has a copy of the book? Yeah. So I was going to get into the introduction of seeking knowledge, but he's going to cover it in the beginning of the book. So the way the book is organized is divided into 4 categories. The first chapter is the chapter of ibadat, like the spiritual side of ibadat. The second one is mu'amalat, which is social interactions, right? So the first one, you're interacting with Allah Azza wa Jal. The second one is how to interact with His creation. The second one, the third is al-muhlikat. Al-muhlikat are things that would destroy the soul and the heart. So he's going to mention all of those things like hasad. Hasad in English is jealousy, right? And envy and arrogance and all these things. Is teaching us, he's going to teach it in that chapter. And then the last chapter is al-munjiyat, how to save your heart after it has been, to how to revive it after dealing with some type of illness. And those are all illnesses of the heart that are going to be mentioned in al-muhlikat, okay? But we're going to be covering in the first semester just the first 2 chapters, which is al-ibadat and al-mu'amalat, right? So we're going to begin with the muqaddimah of the introduction of the author, rahimahullah ta'ala. It should be on page 9 if you guys have the PDF. Have you guys ever gone over the definition of al-basmala? You guys have? Can I see a show of hands? How many people have gone somewhat through the explanation of what Bismillah or al-basmala is? Okay, if that's the case, should we go through it real quick? I don't want to spend too much time on it, that's why. Yeah. So the al-basmala is referring to Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah refers to Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, right? So al-basmala, the reason why we start with Bismillah in the beginning of everything is because we're following the sunnah of Allah Azza wa Jal, and that's how he starts off his kitab. And as for the basmala in the beginning of every, there's a basmala in the beginning of every surah, right? Except for Surah Al-Bara, Tawbah, yeah. But that, as the scholars of the Shafi'i school mentioned, the fact that Allah Azza wa Jal did not place the basmala in the beginning of Surah At-Tawbah is an indication that al-basmala is an ayah from every surah. Yes. Okay. I'm doing it. I'm connected through my phone because I think the internet might be down on this thing, on the Wi-Fi, so I'm unable to share. Huh? Is that again? Oh, you see it right there. Oh, it's on my screen. Let me try to connect one more time, shall we? But yeah, I can't connect, so I don't think I can share. Yeah, it's not connected for me. Let me see if I can connect, share on my phone. No, it's not allowing me to share. So if you guys, for those of you that are on Zoom, if you turn to page, is it page 9 in the book? Should be able to, it should say, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, and then al-Musannif wal-Musannaf. Okay, so we'll briefly go through al-Basmala. I don't want to spend too much time on that. So Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. If you guys see the letter ba in the beginning, the scholars have differed in its meaning, right? It can either mean musahaba, which to accompany, or al-isti'ana, means to seek help with. Okay, I know Sheikh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, he preferred the meaning al-isti'ana. So when you use the letter ba with ism, with name, you're seeking aid and help from Allah Azza wa Jal. So by the name of Allah. The Shafi'i school, the scholars in the Shafi'i school believe that the al-musahaba, it works better. Al-musahaba means to accompany, to technically is very close in meaning. Al-musahaba is to accompany or to seek aid. In the end, you're still seeking aid with Allah Azza wa Jal. So by what we are doing here, by doing this reading, our studies, right, we're seeking aid from Allah Azza wa Jal by His name. Bismi Allah, right? So by the name of Allah Azza wa Jal, Ar-Rahman and Ar-Rahim. Ar-Rahman and Ar-Rahim come from the same root word, Ar-Rahma, which means mercy, compassion, right? From the word Rahima Yarhamu, which means mercy and compassion. The difference between Ar-Rahman, and we know Allah is Laf al-Jalala, which is Allah's name, is his greatest name. Ibn Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala said that Allah's greatest name is Al-Hayyu Al-Qayyum. But the majority said Allah, the name Allah is his greatest name, right? So, and it's unique. The word Allah is from the word aliha, ilah, which means God. But when you put alif lam, it makes it specific, definite. So the God. And that name, Allah, can only be given to Allah Jalla Jalaluhu, okay? Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, Ar-Rahman, if you guys are familiar with Ism Mubalagha, which means to be excessive, whenever a certain word has extra letters in it, it gives it more meaning. Yeah. So Rahman, Ar-Rahim. Ar-Rahman is Allah's mercy towards all of his creation, whether you're Muslim, non-Muslim, everything that is in existence, Allah shows His mercy towards that being, right? So Allah shows mercy towards the Muslim, and also He shows mercy to the kuffar, right? Because as the Prophet ﷺ said, that if this dunya was worth even the wing of a fly, a kafir, a person who's ungrateful, a disbeliever, will not even have a sip of water. But because of Allah being so merciful towards all of His creation, that He's allowing the kuffar to enjoy the life of this dunya, and then the life of the akhirah is for the believing men and women, right? So Ar-Rahman is Allah's mercy towards all of His creation. Ar-Rahim is more specific, and that's the mercy of Allah towards His believers. Yeah, I don't want to get more into it, but Ar-Rahim, generally speaking, is His rahmah for His believers in this world by giving them hidayah, by giving them guidance, and then He blesses them with a reward in the akhirah, right? Because let's stick with the book for now, inshallah. So Bismillah, Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim is by the name of Allah, the most merciful, the most gracious, or however they translate it, right? But in general, Ar-Rahman is Allah's mercy for all of His creation. Ar-Rahim is more specific to the believing men and women, right? And then it goes to Al-Musannif, which is the author, Wal-Musannaf, the book. So Al-Musannif with a kasra on the noon is the person writing the book, and Al-Musannaf is the thing that was written, which is the book. If you guys are familiar with Arabic, sometimes you hear the word Al-Mu'allif. You guys heard that word before? Mu'alliful kitab or Musanniful kitab, Mudawwinul kitab. All those have different meanings. Ta'lif, Mu'allif, is a person, it has a more broader meaning, meaning that if a person is considered Mu'allif, he's writing a book on many things, right? He'll write a book on a specific topic, but he'll also mention other things that are going against, let's say, for example, he'll mention the pros and cons of a specific thing. But when you say Musannif, he's just focusing on one subject, right? In this book, he's only focusing on one subject, and that's the purification of the heart. Ibn Jawzi's book, Minhaj al-Qasidin, you would refer to Ibn Jawzi as a mu'allif, because he focused not just on Tazkiya, he focused on Fiqh and Aqeedah. Does it make sense? Has more broader meaning. Musannif is focusing on one topic, and in this book, they refer to him as Musannif. He's focusing on only Tazkiya, purification of the heart. So the Musannif here, he says, Musannifu hadha al-kitabi al-mustatabi, right? Musannif, do you guys want to do a translation of the entire book? And eventually just have it printed with your help, inshallah? Yeah, let's do that. I won't take too much time, but we'll go over every single word, and we'll do a translation of the book together. How does that sound? So we can leave some legacy behind for ourselves, inshallah. Yeah. All right, Musannif, author. If you guys want to write it down, one of the things that we were told to do as students of knowledge, you always write and take notes. And the best way to take notes is to write directly on the book. So what I wanted to do, and I know you guys don't have a physical copy, but we're going to get it for you guys, inshallah. So this PDF, we'll have it printed out for you guys, inshallah. I'll talk to Sheikh Abdullah and the staff from Miraath, and we'll try to get copies of the book for you. So that way you can write directly onto the book. Yeah. So the word Musannif is author. We just keep it simple. Author, hada, this. Al-Kitab, book, right? Al-Mustatab is unique, right? It stands alone. So it's from the word taba, to be good. Mustatab, istataba, means to seek good. Mustatab is the book that people are seeking good from, right? When we were studying this book, we're seeking the good from this book to bring ourselves closer to Allah Azza wa Jal. Can you guys hear me back in the far back corner, sisters? Yes? Okay. Huwa al-allamatu. He's like the sign, the great scholar, al-allama. He's the guy. Al-faqih, the scholar in fiqh, right? A person who understands the rulings of fiqh. As-salih, the righteous. Najmuddin. Najmuddin, if you guys want to put underline Najmuddin, this is his kunya. Or no, sorry, his laqab, his nickname, Najmuddin. That's not his actual name, right? So we have, in Arabic, we have laqab, which is a nickname. We have kunya, which is generally Abu, right? You know, the Abu al-Qasim, as the Prophet is known as Abu al-Qasim, and then Khadija al-Qasim, and stuff like that. That's called kunya, right? When you put Abu or in the beginning of the word. Laqab is nickname. So Najmuddin is a nickname. You guys can write nickname on top of that. Abu al-Abbas right here is his kunya. Abu al-Abbas is his kunya. And then his name is, if you want to write, draw a line under Ahmed all the way until Ibn Qudama, that's his actual name. So his name is Ahmed. His first name is Ahmed. Ibn Abdurrahman is his father, right? The son of Abdurrahman. Ibn Muhammad is his grandfather. Ibn Ahmed is his great grandfather, and then Ibn Qudama, and then al-Maqdisi is referring to Bayt al-Maqdis in Jerusalem. So he's Philistini, right? He's Philistini. Imam Ghazali was born in Gaza. He's Philistini. A lot of the scholars of our past that you see with the name al-Maqdisi, or you see Damashqi, which is Syria, a lot of those scholars were actually born in Philistine. They left because whatever happened in those times, subhanAllah, the people of Philistine have been tested for centuries. And Allah chose them to be unique individuals out of his entire ummah. Anybody that you ever meet from Philistine, a lot of times they're very intelligent and mashallah, bless them. But al-Maqdisi is referring to al-Maqdis, Bayt al-Maqdis wal-Quds, right? Al-Quds al-Sharif. As-Salihi is referring to a place called Salih. I can't remember where that is exactly. Or it can also be, the scholars have said, because he comes from a righteous lineage, a Salihi, a person who's Salih. And the ya in the beginning, at the end, is usually referring to a person or an attribute to a location and so forth, right? Al-Hanbali, they call him Al-Hanbali. Why? Because he's a scholar in the Hanbali school. يعرف بابن Sheikh Khatib al-Jabal. And he's also known as the son of the Sheikh, that's the Khatib al-Jabal. The Jabal here is referring to Jabal al-Salihiyah, which is located in Syria. Jabal al-Salihiyah is referring to Syria, right? So he's the son of the great scholar, which is Abdurrahman, and who's also known as Khatib al-Jabal, the lecturer of the area called al-Salihiyah, Jabal al-Salihiyah, the Safhi al-Qasiyun. Al-Qasiyun is in Syria, right? So Qasiyun is an area found in Syria, present-day Syria. So did I translate every single word or no? Kind of, somewhat? All right. So generally speaking, this is just his lineage, okay? So if you guys want to just underline, and the main focus here is just his name, Ahmed ibn Abdurrahman, ibn Muhammad, ibn Ahmed, ibn Qudama, al-Maqdisi, al-Salihi, al-Hanbali. Wiladatuhu, his birth. So the word wiladatuhu means his birth. Wulida fi Sha'ban, he was born in the month of Sha'ban, sanata ihda wa khamsin wa sittimi'ah. So he was born in the year 651 after the hijrah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The hijrah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam starts when he first migrates. You know, we talk the Hijri calendar. We have the Islamic calendar basically. It starts from the time the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam left Mecca to Medina. That's when the first year of hijrah begins, right? And this was established by Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu ta'ala anhu. He decided that we need to come up with our own Islamic calendar and stop depending on the calendar of the kuffar. So let's do a hijri. So we started from the hijrah of the Prophet ﷺ, because that's when the first Islamic state was established in Medina. So we have to have our own thing. So they established the hijri calendar, and it started when the Prophet ﷺ left Mecca and he arrived to Medina. So 651 years after the Prophet ﷺ made hijrah, the author rahimahullah ta'ala was born, right? So nash'atuhu, his upbringing. Nash'atuhu means his upbringing. Wa talabuhu, his seeking, lil ilmi, his seeking of knowledge.
Class is over at 7:15 or 7:30. Okay. We'll stop at 15 and we'll have the last 15 minutes for questions, inshallah. So wiladatuhu or nash'atuhu means his upbringing. Can you guys? Okay. So nash'atuhu, his upbringing, wa talabuhu lil ilmi, and his seeking of knowledge. Okay. So today we'll just cover the introduction. We'll get into the book next week, inshallah. Sami'a al-haditha. So he heard hadith, the science of hadith. He learned hadith. Wa huwa saghir, when he was young, right? He started at a very, very young age, right? Wa tafaqqaha means he learned fiqh. The word tafaqqaha means to learn fiqh. Ala walidihi. So the first person that he studied fiqh from was his father. Qadi al-Qudah. He was the judge of all judges during his time. He was a Hanbali, right? Sheikh al-Jabal, which is, they're referring to the mount. He's the Sheikh of the Jabal, which is an area, which is for a Salihiyah, which is the mountain of Salihiyah. Shamsuddin, the son of the religion, like as the actual son, S-U-N, right? Shamsuddin, Abdurrahman, Ibn Abi Umar, right? His father's name is Abdurrahman, Ibn Abi Umar, wa Abu Umar huwa, and Abu Umar huwa, he, Shaykh al-Islam. He was also known as Shaykh al-Islam. Muhammad, am I going too fast? No? It's good? All right. Ibn Ahmed, his actual name is وهو شيخ الإسلام محمد ابن أحمد الذي أنشأ المدرسة العمرية. He was the one that started, his father, the author's father, right, who was Sheikh al-Jabal, was the one that started al-Madrasa al-Umariyah, right? The school, the al-Umariyah school, fi Salihiyah. So he was the one that established this school in an area called Salihiyah in Syria. وهو أخو شيخ الإسلام موفق الدين عبد الرحمن ibn Ahmed al-Maqdisi. And we mentioned that he's the brother of the famous Ibn Qudama, موفق الدين Abdullah ibn Ahmed al-Maqdisi, مؤلف كتاب المغني. He's the author of the book, the famous book Al-Mughni. Mawsu'a means encyclopedia. Al-Fiqh, Al-Muqaran. So it's an encyclopedia on comparative fiqh, right? And we spoke about this book earlier. Don't worry, this is, we'll get through the boring part and we'll get to the book, inshallah. So we'll get a, what did they call it? Iman rush? Is that, you guys still use that term? It's an old term that we used like 20 years ago. I'm pretty old, so so Kitab Khatib Kana Khatib al-Jabal, and referring to his father right here. Kana Khatib al-Jabal wa Qadi al-Qudah wa Shaykh al-Hanabila. So he was a judge. He was the Sheikh of the Hanbali school. Like when they say Shaykh al-Hanabila, they're referring, he's the Sheikh during his time when it came to the school of thought, of the Hanbali school of thought. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with, like, with every school of thought, there's a whole lineage of scholars, right? And there's always these top two scholars in the school that stands out among everybody else, right? In the Shafi'i school, we have al-Rafi'i and we have al-Nawawi, okay? So when you talk about the two sheikhs in the school, you refer to al-Rafi'i, al-Nawawi, and then you have the contemporary, or the ones that come later, like Ibn Hajar and so forth. But if you say the two sheikhs of the school, al-Rafi'i, al-Nawawi. In the Hanbali school, there are two sheikhs as well. Majduddin Ibn Taymiyyah, not the Ibn Taymiyyah that we're familiar with, Shaykh Islam, his grandfather. His grandfather was the scholar in the Hanbali school. So when they refer back to the sheikh, they're referring to Majduddin Ibn Taymiyyah, okay? And then the second is Ibn Qudama, Muwafaq Ibn Qudama, which is his uncle. So those are the two sheikhs in the school. Like in hadith, we have a Shaykh Khan. You guys know Shaykh Khan, Bukhari, Muslim, right? In Nahu, you have Sibawayh, you have Khalil, you have all these different sciences. Usul, you have Al-Ghazali, and you have Al-Juwayni, right? I'm not no, I'll stop there. Well, let's move forward, inshallah. I was gonna say, every science that you come across that's being taught for centuries, right? And every single book, majority of the books are the Shafi'i school books, by the way. Right? You talk about usul fiqh, all the books that you study, al-Waraqat, you have Jam al-Jawami, all these books are written by Shafi'i scholars. You have in Aqeedah, you have Tahawi is he was originally Shafi'i that converted to Abu Hanifa school. Hanafi came Hanafi. But in generally speaking, in Tajweed, al-Jazariya, and it keeps going, right? So let's go. Let's move forward. Actually, I don't want you guys to think that I'm like, yeah. What do they call it? Muta'assim, which is like an extreme supporter of Shafi. I am. I'm just putting it out there. I am. But you know, if there's something that's more correct, closer to the truth, we always try to follow the truth wherever it may be. So you have, so he was the khatib, right? The lecturer, the one that gave advice and to the people, and he was also the judge of all judges, and he was a sheikh of the Hamli school. Sari al-Hifz, he memorized very fast. It was said that whenever he would just look at something, he would just memorize it right away. You know, so and this was a common thing. Even this day and age, there's a lot of people that where they just see something or hear something for once, they're able to just soak it in and memorize it right away. You know, but even with that, they still repeat the certain ayat. Let's say, for example, the Quran. Even if they read it once and memorize it right away, they still repeat it at least 500 times. Like there's a practice in Mauritania, and we know how the Mauritanians, especially in Shinqit, like we think they just have like the brains of like this, they're just computers, right? But little do we know that they spend hours and hours memorizing. There was a sheikh, he said that whenever he tried to memorize, when he began memorizing, even though he memorized the ayah right away, he would sit there and read the ayah 1,500 times. 1,500 times. And that's why they're like encyclopedias. They're like computers. Anything you ask them, it just comes out, right? Like they're able to recall everything. It's not just because they were gifted with a gift, but they also put in a lot of work, right? So with the work itself is what it will produce results. So we are capable of doing that as well. Each and every single one of us. We know someone, like, for example, you guys know Sheikh Abkasha Al-Kamini. He visited Seattle a few times. He said that when you're trying to memorize the Quran or anything in general, you should not read it no less than 33 times. That's just from looking at it. Let's say, for example, Wafatu rahimahullah ta'ala. He'll look at it. He said you should look at it at least 33 times visually, and then close it and repeat it 33 times again in the morning. And then in the afternoon, do the same thing. And then at night, do the same thing. And that's why you see he is the way he is, right? May Allah preserve him. وَوَفَاتُهُ رَحِمَ اللَّهُ تَعَالَى. We didn't get there yet. So he was able to memorize really fast, and he had a very good understanding had comprehension. Allah blessed him with comprehension as well. So Sari al-Hifzi, so Kana Sari al-Hifzi, he was able to memorize fast. وَجَيِّدَ الْفَهْمِ, and he had good understanding. He was able to comprehend really well. وَوَلِيَ الْقُضَاء وَلَمْ يَبْلُغْ الثَّلَاثِينَ. So he was also in charge of giving fatwas and judgment, right? And he hasn't even reached the age of 30. So he was very young, right? وَلَمْ يَبْلُغْ الثَّلَاثِينَ. So 30 is 30s. So he was doing all of these things being under the age of 30. وَشَهِدَ فَتْحَ طرابلس. طرابلس, I'm not sure where that is. But he witnessed the conquering of this area called Tarabis. Tarabulus. One of the two. You guys familiar with the area? Yes, what is this? Asham. So Tarabulus, how do you pronounce it? Okay, Tarabulus is an area in Sham, in Syria, present-day Syria. So he witnessed the conquering or the fath, right, of that area. Ma'al Malik al-Mansur. right, with the king al-Mansur. وَكَانَ مَلِيحَ الْبَزَّةِ ذَكِيًّا مَلِيحَ الدَّرْسِ وَلَهُ مُشَارَكَةٌ جَيِّدَةٌ فِي الْعُلُومِ. So he was malih. Malih is usually referring to salt, milh, right? Malih al-Bazza, Bazza, we'll get back to that. I can't remember. Does anybody know what the word Bazza means? Bazza. Say it again, sorry. Huh? I'll look it up right now. Give me a second. Okay, we'll move on. Bazza, it'll be a word that I'll look up and I'll get back to you, inshallah. Malih means to have great interest in, right? Dhakiyan is smart, intelligent. Malih dars, right? Great interest in dars, in lessons. Walahu musharaka, and walahu is he also had musharaka. He had a hand in. Jayyida means good. Fil ulumi, meaning that he was a person who was very entrenched in knowledge. Not only was he a faqih Hanbali, but he also was entrenched in other sciences as well, right? Whether it be lugha, usul, and all these different sciences, he also had a hand in these different sciences as well, okay? Wafatuhu, his death, rahimahullah ta'ala. And you guys remember, for those that attended the last thing, you guys remember why we say rahimahullah ta'ala? Or why do we use, for example, okay, he passed away, rahimahullah ta'ala. Why do we say, what's your name, brother? Muhammad. Well, if I said Muhammad, hafidhahullah, right? Hafidhah is a past tense verb. But why would I use a past tense verb for Muhammad and he's alive? We understand when we say rahimahullah for someone who passed away, may Allah have mercy upon that individual because he passed away. Can I say rahimahullah for Muhammad? I can, right? Technically, you can, right? It will still make sense. But what I'm trying to get to here is that how come I don't say yahfadhuhullah instead of, why do I say hafidhahullah and not yahfadhuhullah? Go ahead.
And who makes like exactly that, but he didn't die. But it's like
I think I understand what you're trying to get to. Like we said, mentioned ata'amullah, right? When Allah's giving, when Allah's speaking to the believers, why did Allah use the word past tense? Because it's a guarantee. Even though he's referring to something in the future. Yeah. So like hafidhahullah, we know that Allah will protect him right now, but also Allah will protect him in the future, for example. When we sometimes a phrase is used in past tense form to show that it's guaranteed. We spoke about, I think in the last class about Ramadan. Ramadan just passed. But we were talking about Allah uses man sama Ramadan and when man qama Ramadan imanan wa ihtisaban, with iman, with faith, and seeking a reward from Allah alone. غُفِرَ لَهُ مَا تَقَدَّمَ مِنْ ذَنْبِهِ. Allah uses that whoever fasts in the month of Ramadan with iman and seeking reward with Allah Azza wa Jal alone, Allah uses the past tense verb, غُفِرَ, which doesn't make sense, right? Generally speaking, we would say, if you fast, Allah's going to forgive you. But Allah uses past tense. Why? To show it is guaranteed. that if you fast, you're guaranteed to be forgiven for. And that's why he uses past tense. And that's the beauty of the Arabic language. You'll see it's over again. A lot of times you'll make dua in past tense, which doesn't make sense, right? But you know that when you make a dua, and Allah, Prophet telling us the dua in past tense form, meaning that if you do it, Allah will answer your call. Guaranteed. Make sense? This is to show that it is guaranteed. Tuwfiya means he passed away. Yawm al-Thulatha, which is on a Tuesday. Thani Ashar, the 12th. Min Jumad al-Ula, from Jumad al-Ula. Sanata sab'in wa thamanin wa sittimi'ah. So 689. So he passed away, rahimahullah ta'ala, the year 679, Biqasiyun, which is in Syria, an area called Qasiyun. Wadufina ila jamb abihi. He was buried right next to his father, right? Someone who he looked up to. And in general, everyone's going to be resurrected with the person they love. We know this is a famous hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, that when you love someone, right, you will die with them, and you'll also be resurrected with them. And we ask Allah to resurrect us and for us to be joined with the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So his father was his first sheikh, the person he looked up to, and he followed him in his footsteps. And Allah allowed him to be a greater scholar than his father, but also be buried right next to his father, rahimahullah ta'ala. So he died in Qasiyun. He was buried there as well, next to his father, wa jaddihi. So he was buried next to his father, and he was buried next to his grandfather. Wa kana umruhu. And his age at death. What do you guys think? How old? Just don't look at the Arabic. How old do you think he was when he died? 63. That's the year the Prophet ﷺ Abu Bakr passed away. No, that's not the answer, but that was his answer. 90? You guys know what year did he pass away? What year do you guys think he passed away? How old do you think he passed away? 38. Did you see it on the book? He died at the age of 38. Rahimahullah ta'ala. 38. And that's how old I am right now. He died at my age, subhanAllah. Huh? When you read the Sirah, they didn't really mention how he died or what he was sick with and stuff like that, but he died at that age. But the customs of the scholars that they would never sleep. And imagine like just living life full of just a lot of anxiety, because the anxiety comes from just seeking knowledge, right? There was a sheikh by the name of Abu Dhar al-Harawi, a Maliki sheikh. He said he spent 40 years, I'm talking about the way they live their lives, 40 years focused only on one issue, right? And he would ask anybody that he would meet the same question, and no one was able to give him the answer for that question for 40 years. Imagine just walking around your entire, like basically that's your entire life, and trying to figure out one answer to a question that you had. I was never able to find it until after 40 years, right? So Imam Muslim, he died from doing research. So what it does, what happens to a person that doesn't sleep? Eventually their body starts to catch up to them. Their body's overstressed. They become swollen. They start dealing with internal issues that they don't even know that they're dealing with. Because sleep is important, right? Sleep, you have to sleep in order for your body to function. But a lot of them will never sleep. It's insane. Imam Nawawi said he never laid on his back for 2 years straight. And Imam Nawawi passed away at the age of 42. Right? Yeah, so a lot of scholars died at very young ages because of their lifestyle, because of the work that they put in. And when they say they didn't sleep, they didn't sleep. There's a poet, he says, بِقَدْرِ الْكَدِّ تُكْتَسَبُ الْمَعَالِي. The amount of effort that you put in, that's how your status is going to be with Allah Azza wa Jal, right? وَمَنْ طَلَبَ الْعُلَى سَهِرَ اللَّيَالِي. And if you want that greatness, you want that status with Allah Azza wa Jal, سَهِرَ اللَّيَالِي. You will spend the nights awake. And that's how they lived their life. And they said, تَرُومُ الْعِزَّةَ ثُمَّ تَنَامُ لَيْلًا. You want this honor from Allah and you sleep at night? We all sleep. I love sleep. Right? But they cared less about sleep. Even eating as well. They barely ate. Imam Muslim, he died from eating over like just dates because he was doing his research, right? So all these scholars, the way they live their lives it's unhuman, so you could say. Like, and Allah chose, obviously, He chose certain individuals to carry this deen for us, right? And it had to be people that were willing to sacrifice their entire life, so that way we could be Muslims, and that way we can carry on that message after them as well. So they were able to gather all that information just to make it easier for us to have that information, right? So that's why it's our job as well to try to carry on that legacy and learn from them. And obviously, for everybody they know their limits, but everybody has a place in this deen. Everybody has a job that Allah has assigned them with, and everybody has a gift that Allah has given to us, right? Every single person. None of us can say that, oh, I wasn't, but no, Allah chose every single one of us to carry that message of His to the best of our abilities. Our minds are able to comprehend, and it doesn't take away, just because, like, for example, this person knows more than you in deen, doesn't mean that his reward is greater than yours if you're putting in the same effort or even more, right? In the end, it's what you do and how much you try. As long as you continue to try, your status will continue to raise with Allah Azza wa Jalla, right? And Louis said the famous hadith of Prophet ﷺ, he said that a person who perfects the recitation of the Quran will have one reward written for them, but a person who struggles has double the reward. And that should be more than a motivation for us to continue, right? If you struggle, you get more reward than the person who doesn't struggle, right? But it's the consistency and the effort that you put in that will count for you. And then the author, rahimahullah ta'ala, he died in the year 689 Hijriya in the area called Qasiyun. And he was buried next to his father, and he was buried next to his grandfather, and he was only 38 years old, rahimahullah ta'ala, rahmatan wasi'ah. Ameen. As for the book, Amma al-Musannaf, we'll go through this real quick. I think I already covered this with you guys, because we said that the book itself is a summarization of Minhaj al-Qasidin, by Ibn al-Jawzi. Minhaj al-Qasidin is the summarization of Al-Imam al-Ghazali's book, Ihya Ulumuddin. We said an Ihya Ulumuddin covers so many different subjects: Fiqh, Aqeedah, Suluk, purification of the heart, Tasawwuf, and so forth. Ibn al-Jawzi, Abu al-Faraj Ibn al-Jawzi came, studied the entire book of Imam al-Ghazali from cover to cover. Imagine reading 20 volumes, a book that's 20 volumes, for example, right? From cover to cover, multiple times. And then he derived what he considered to be closer to the Sunnah, right? He eliminated all the things that had weak chains of narrations, and he eliminated things that didn't have a chain to it, or anything related that was a little I don't want to use the wrong word, awkward, or I don't want to say incorrect, but things that it was weird. All right, is that a better word? I don't know. Either way, there was no origins to it in the deen, right? So he eliminated all those things. And what Najmuddin Ibn Qudama did with Minhaj al-Qasidin, he took that book and he summarized it even more. So he took out all the fiqhi issues from the book, right? He eliminated all those things. And then whatever ahadith that he found that he believed, based on his research, to be weak, that Ibn Jawzi gathered, he eliminated those as well. So that's why we have this book in front of us called Mukhtasar Minhaj al-Qasidin, which is a summarization of Minhaj al-Qasidin. So that's basically what it covers in here. I know, because we're running short on time. And it says, hold on, give me a second. So that's it. So next week, inshallah, we'll go straight into the book. Inshallah, we'll go into the introduction of the author himself, what he wrote in the beginning of the book, right? And then this is where the book actually starts, okay? He's going to explain why he wrote the book, how the book is categorized, and then we'll go into the actual first chapter, which is the chapter of seeking knowledge. And then it goes into the spiritual side of prayer, the spiritual aspect of giving zakah and so forth, right? At the beginning, obviously, it was just an introduction, and I got into a lot of things that maybe I shouldn't have got into with all the extras. We're going to be mainly focusing on the book itself, and inshallah, we ask Allah Azza wa Jalla to allow us to benefit greatly from this book. We ask Allah Azza wa Jalla to give us understanding. We ask Allah Azza wa Jalla to allow us to connect with Him through this book and learning His deen. And we know that the easiest path by far to Jannah is seeking knowledge, right? Just the fact that you take that first step and you're being rewarded for every step you take just to learn. And when we say seeking knowledge, it doesn't mean that you have to go out of the comfort of your own home. It could be you listening to something online. That's seeking knowledge as well. If you're wanting to learn about Allah Azza wa Jal, all that counts for you. So any effort that you put in, any time that you put into learning about the deen of Allah Azza wa Jal and trying to understand who Allah Azza wa Jal is, you're being rewarded for it. And Allah is making your path to Jannah that much easier, right? Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah ta'ala, said that there's a Jannah in this world, right? That if you don't enter into that Jannah in this world, you will not enter into the Jannah of the Akhirah. He said, it's muhabbatullah, learning to love Allah. But how do you love Allah? Ma'rifatuhu. You have to learn about Allah Azza wa Jal. But how do you learn about Allah Azza wa Jal? Al-unsu bihi. You have to spend time with Allah Azza wa Jal, right? You have to spend time with Allah Azza wa Jal. And then how do you spend time with Allah Azza wa Jal? By trying to do ibadah. So he said these four things, that you love Allah, you know Allah, you spend time with Allah, like private time, like, like one-on-one with Allah Azza wa Jal, with the recitation of the book, pray your prayers and ask Allah Azza wa Jal. You know how a lot of times students ask, like, where do I start when it comes to seeking knowledge? You start with Allah Azza wa Jal first. You ask Allah Azza wa Jal to guide you to where you need to be, right? It's not about what institute you go to, what chef you need to sit with. It's about who Allah will place you with, right? And you cannot study, obviously, you cannot study without a teacher. You need a teacher to study, right? They call them al-Warraq. You know what Warraq is? Warraq are people that just read from books. And they said that the Warraq are those, they do benefit from the books, but they're deprived of so much benefit and wisdom because they're not sitting with scholars. The reason why they say you have to sit with a teacher, right, is because you benefit from their manners, you benefit from the wisdom, and there's a chain. Just like how the companions took from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam took from Jibril. Who did Jibril take from? From Allah. So the same thing, it goes down. The tabi'eens took from the companions, the tabi'eens from the tabi'eens, and it goes down. There's a chain of narration that comes all the way down, right? And that's where the barakah is, the barakah of the ilm, right? So you cannot depend on just reading books and articles. You actually have, but you should still do that if you don't have access to teachers. But when you have access to teachers and you refuse to study, then that's you will be deprived of barakah and wisdom, right? So these are the four things that are considered the Jannah of this dunya is love of Allah, knowing Allah, spending time with Allah, and then trying to fulfill His commandments. And Allah Azza wa Jalla doesn't ask us for much. Just fulfill your obligatories. Allah Azza wa Jalla, the Prophet said, the most beloved acts of worship to me are those that I have made obligatory. And then my servant will continue to come close to me with what? Voluntary acts. And then I will love him, right? But yeah, so if we don't enter into the Jannah, this dunya, we have to pray that Allah Azza wa Jalla allows us to enter into the Jannah and the Akhirah. We ask Allah Azza wa Jalla to allow us to enter into both Jannahs, the Jannah of the dunya and the Jannah of the Akhirah. We'll stop it here, inshallah. I'll leave the floor open for questions if you guys have any questions. If not, then we'll meet back next Sunday, inshallah. No, the weird things is like Sufism. There's a lot of things that are mentioned about Sufism. How important is it to know when scholars died and born? It's very important to learn about our history and the people that we follow. And just like when we study hadith, you have to know the individual in order for you to be able to take from them, right? So and the learning about their life is it's very important. There's a sister that said, وَكَانَ مَلِيحَ الْبَزَّةِ. She said it means he was well dressed. Jazakallah khair. Malih al-Bazza. So Malih in general is to put a lot of interest in clothing. So he was well dressed, mashallah. Wednesday is with Ustadh Kyle. How do we get? Sorry, was that? Oh yeah, for the first month, right? Okay. On Wednesday we'll be with Ustadh Abdullah. It says, how do we get over our love for sleep, even when you stay up but your body gets tired? I can't answer that because I love sleep myself. So the thing is that they said that the night, as Allah Azza wa Jal says, the night are for if you want the nur of Allah Azza wa Jal in your life, you pray at night and you make istighfar during the day. وَبِالْأَسْحَارِ هُمْ يَسْتَغْفِرُونَ. If you want barakah in your life, you want blessings to be in your life, what Allah Azza wa Jal says that فَقُلْتُ اسْتَغْفِرُوا رَبَّكُمْ إِنَّهُ كَانَ غَفَّارًا. Right? Say to them, make istighfar to Allah Azza wa Jal because He is the most forgiving. Ism mubalagha, ghaffara. Allah wants to forgive and He will continue to forgive and He loves to forgive. And what does He do? He will send rain upon you and all these blessings. So if you want blessings in your life, you make istighfar. You make a lot of istighfar, especially during the daytime when your life is so busy. And at night is when you spend your uns with Allah Azza wa Jal at night in prayer. Even if it's just one rak'ah of witr, is more than anything. You'll find how blessed your life will become, right? And it has to be something that's consistent. Did anybody attend? Some of you guys attended the event on Saturday, right? Yeah, it ended early. Alhamdulillah. One of the things I was supposed to talk about sickness before health, but I want to mention one hadith though before you guys all leave. That whatever you do, right, while being in good health and you're consistent with it, Allah Azza wa Jalla is not going to leave you hanging when you become sick, right? The Prophet ﷺ says, إِذَا مَرِضَ الْعَبْدُ أَوْ سَافَرَ. That if a servant becomes sick or travel, كُتِبَ لَهُ مِثْلُ مَا كَانَ يَعْمَلُهُ مُقِيمًا صَحِيحًا. That he'll be written the same reward that when he was healthy and he was doing that same action while he is sick or while traveling. What a great blessing or reward that Allah Azza wa Jalla is rewarding us with. So when you're consistent in doing something, it doesn't have to be something big. It could be something very small, like waking up in the morning and saying, Alhamdulillah alladhi ahyana ba'dama amatana wa ilayhi nushur. Praises, all praises to Allah Azza wa Jalla that gave us life after death. That is ibadah. You making dua when you enter into the bathroom, that's ibadah. Don't ever belittle any type of ibadah. So when you become sick and you are not able to do that ibadah, just by, like, for example, people become sick and they can no longer speak, right? And you can't say the dua anymore. Allah will continue to reward you with that same ibadah that you did once when you were healthy while you were sick. SubhanAllah. And I'll end it with this, and I've been itching to tell this story. Like really, like I told my wife, I said, I really want to tell this story. And it's a personal story, right? It's a very, very personal story. And it's a story, I always talk about my mom, rahimahullah ta'ala, because she was an example, like an actual, like someone that I actually saw do like, in front of my eyes. We always hear stories about the Salaf and scholars and all these different things. But when you see someone in your household or someone that you know do those same actions, it hits differently. So my mom, rahimahullah ta'ala, she was a person who always read the Quran. Like, I'm not just exaggerating. She woke up in the morning, she read the Quran, she would record herself as well. I have some recordings. And you know, one of the recordings is وَلِبَاسِ التَّقْوَى ذَلِكَ خَيْرٌ. The clothing of taqwa, that's the best clothing you can have. That's one of the things. But she used to read the Quran when she would wake up in the morning. She would read the Quran when she would go to sleep, right? When she was healthy. And then she became ill. And when she became ill, it was very difficult for her to recite the Quran. Like, she couldn't even find the energy to get up. And there were times where she would ask, like she would say, I wish I could read. But, right? And we know that a person who's consistent in doing something, Allah is not going to leave them hanging. So when she passed away, rahimahullah ta'ala, I skipped a part. You know, I don't know if you know Imam Yaqub. He was the former Imam of CRC before Sheikh Sufyan. So he started the class with the elder, like the old ladies, right? In tafsir in the Cham language, okay? They started from Surah Al-Fatiha all the way until Surah Al-Nas, the entire Quran. So my mom started with that same batch of students from the beginning, and then she became ill and she was no longer able to study with them, right? But she was like the source for all those old ladies. Or whatever they had questions, they'll call my mom up, she'll answer them, you know? And then she would read and she would study, and she was like really keen in studying. She would attend every single class, right? And then when she became ill, she was no longer able to do that. And she passed away. And what was crazy, the day in 2022, I believe, the day that all those, we call them maymays, old grandmas, were graduating from completing the Quran, right? I received, because I was still doing my studies as well. I received on that same day, because my mom passed away already. On that same day, a mail came to my front door. And then I opened the door and it was my diploma. It was as if Allah Azza wa Jal was showing me that because of her effort, and she wasn't able to complete her studies with that batch of students on that day, Allah allowed me to graduate on her behalf. And then I gave the speech on that day as well, on her behalf. Because I know that if she was still alive, her teacher would have made her give a talk on the stage. So whatever you do in good health, Allah Azza wa Jalla will never leave you hanging, ever. So whatever you do that's little, but you're consistent with it, Allah Azza wa Jalla is always going to reward you. And in another narration, Prophet ﷺ said that for every day and night, you'll be written the reward for what you used to do. Allahu Akbar. Allah is amazing. The greatest. Allahu Akbar. I will end the class here, inshallah. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Yeah.